Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a monster analysis on Eeltron. Eeltron was the only of Thalassa's guards to keep his job when Thebes took the throne. He was too strong to waste and his sense of duty won't let him betray the queen, whoever she was. And so he stayed loyal to the throne, but he was also extremely happy and relieved the day Thalassa returned. And so here we have Eeltron, one of the newest and latest monsters from the Aquatic Feast maze. I love this monster design. At first I thought he was a water monster and then I'm like, oh wait, he's a thunder monster. This monster is, when I first saw him on Taringa, I wasn't that overly impressed with him. But then I saw this monster's trait and I'm like, whoa, this monster is extremely usable. So let's start off by talking about the trait. By the way, I don't know if I already mentioned this, fantastic monster design. He is hardened, which is nothing too special, 20% chance to block all negative effects. But he also has a status caster ability, which is immunity to control. So, from the beginning, all of your monsters are essentially immune to control effects. So, how awesome is that? It's one of the best things I've ever seen on a monster. This trait, it's honestly better than some of the War Masters that we've seen, in my opinion, because you don't need to worry about getting denied. That's one of the main reasons Elvira became such a popular must-have monster. Giving evasion to your whole team protected you from being denied. Now, evasion takes it a step further because it protects you from everything. You take no damage, nothing hits you, no negative effects, nothing. Well, Eeltron may not do a status caster evasion or anything, but you're still protected from control skills. And this is really, really great. You could argue that it's even maybe slightly better than one of the other monsters that was released has a status caster that gives you immunity to AoEs, which is great because most deny skills are AoEs. But then the dodge area trait also blocks like an attacker doing a strong AoE skill, right? Whereas Eeltron doesn't, but Eeltron blocks all control skills. So single target, AoE, and those single target AoEs. Because you know what I'm talking about, right? For example, Zyron the Ruby, one of the most used deny monsters. Zyron the Ruby has a skill called Ruby Explosion, which is a single target with an AoE effect. So the status caster dodge area trait won't block against that because it's not an AoE skill, it's a single target with an AoE effect. This skill right here, Eeltron's immunity to control status caster, this trait will block Ruby's Ruby Explosion because you're going to be blocking the control skill, not so much the skill itself or the damage from it. You're still going to get hit with ignition, but at least you won't get mega stunned, mega frozen, mega possessed, whatever it may be. So I really like this trait. You instantly have protection against getting denied from the get-go. That's amazing. The example I've been using is if you're fighting Kihaku can do his possession and free skill. Won't matter. You're immune to it. You'll take the damage, whatever it may be, but at least you won't get denied. That is awesome for your whole entire team. So you can just plopping this monster on your team. He doesn't have to go first. He doesn't have to be extremely fast. Just plopping him in your team and you are protected from control skills. Which is great because if you bring a fast monster, let's say the enemy's Kihaku goes first, does AoE possession and freeze, you don't get possessed or freeze thanks to the status caster, then your main deny monster can go and possess the enemy attacker, or freeze the enemy attacker, or stun the enemy attacker, or AoE possess, AoE freeze. So just plopping this monster in your team, you have a chance to react and to potentially win the game. So just trait alone, I really love Eeltron. And then when we get into the skills, this monster actually is extremely usable because he basically has a bunch of AoEs, and since he's an attacker monster, since he's going potentially last, you can set up a combination to where you have a support monster to just give this monster increased accuracy and double damage, and then this monster can just attack with a strong AoE based attack. You have 2 strength rooms on this monster. His attacks also apply DOTs, which take away extra damage, extra life I should say, from the enemy's monsters, and you're good to go. And with that being said, let's talk about his power stat, which is one of the highest in the games, 3586. That is crazy high. In the Thunder category specifically, it's actually the 5th highest. First up is Faraday the Obscure with 3663, then Faraday the Discharger with 3652, then we have Talonay with 3630, and Toshiro with 3619, and then we have Eeltron with 3586. As for his life stat, it's also quite impressive. 31,667, this is the 11th highest in the Thunder category. There's so many tanks in the Thunder category, but still, it's pretty impressive considering what this monster has to offer, considering he has a pretty high power stat. And then his speed stat is nothing too shabby, 3432. In the Thunder category, it actually seems pretty bad because he's really slow for a Thunder monster. But really, in terms of all monster, this is a really great speed stat. Overall, I would say he has above average stats. Again, that power stat being the main thing, and his trait just being so impressive. Unfortunately, one thing about this monster is that he only is in 2 books, the Sea book and the Adventures book. Although one advantage to him being in the Sea book is the fact that he's a Thunder monster, so he has an elemental advantage killing sea monsters, so that's good for him. And as for his slots, he can hold the Essence Relic and the Trap Relic. And when it comes to the Essence Relic, well, it's obviously a lot of healing relics, so he has even more survivability. And of course, if you're fortunate enough to have Uriel's Essence, you can definitely take advantage of this, to where it's like having Eeltron twice, because even if he dies once, he comes back from the dead, and you have another chance to potentially win the game, and in a team war scenario, a greater likelihood of getting 3 coins. And then as for the Trap Relics, well, there are so many things you can utilize. Oblation Trap to drain the enemy's stamina, or maybe you do Pestilence Trap to reduce all the enemy's max life from the get-go to make it easier for you to defeat them all. Or maybe you have one of the newer Diamond Relics, which just really do a lot. After being hit, if wearer's life is below 75%, deals X amount of water damage depending on the level. Let's level this up. Let's max this out. Look at that. You can deal 8,000 points of water damage just because you were hit from the enemy monster. After being hit, if wearer's life is below 50, removes stamina and deals damage. The Mantis Claw Trap is just insane. It'll drain enemy stamina and deal so much damage. That is just crazy. And then Tiger Trap, after being hit, if wearer's life is below 50%, deals some light damage. How much light damage? Up to 20,000. So definitely very crazy. Why does this not go all the way? Ice Trap. Is this not? Oh, is this maybe a gold relic? Maybe that's why. So yeah, Tiger Trap, Mantis Claw Trap, really powerful if you happen to have them. But anyhow, now let's go look at the skills. The ultimate attack is called Fully Charged. Deals very heavy thunder damage to one enemy and applies Mega Stun to all enemies. This is actually very awesome. It only targets a single enemy, which is, you're probably like, no, why can't it be AoE damage? Honestly, considering dodge area is becoming a new trait, you do want single enemy target skills that have an AoE effect like this. And the fact that you do Mega Stun, not regular stun or anything, I think that's awesome. I really love this ultimate attack. It's a great ultimate attack. For skills group 1, there's nothing really worth mentioning. We have Gasping Strike, Hair Dryer in the Bath, Light in the Deep. Gasping Strike applies Drowned. Hair and Dryer deals Shock. Light in the Deep is Shock and Drown. Basically, we're going to see upgraded versions in Skills Group 2, and then upgraded versions again in Skills Group 3, AoE versions and single hits. So anyhow, Skills Group 2, we have Suffocating Strike, deals very heavy special damage to one enemy, applies Drown to one enemy, requires cooldown. So this skill deals 55 special base damage, costs 22 stamina, has a 1-turn cooldown, and it applies Drown. Drown will reduce enemy stamina by 15% and reduce HP by 10% for the next 3 turns. Honestly, I think this skill is worth running. Considering you're a Thunder monster, considering you have a high power, considering you're in an element that has Voltic and Xyla, 2 incredible extra turn monsters, where if they get a turn, you're as good as dead if you don't have a way to counter them. With this monster's power, if you give him some strength runes, Suffocating Strike might give you the potential to OTK those monsters. And maybe, even if they come within like an inch of dying, if you manage to land Drowned against them, even though Xyla has Bulwark, even though Voltic has Hardened, if you manage to land Drowned in those 3 turns where they do their extra turn skills, the Drowned effect would kill them. So I think Suffocating Strike is a definite must-have skill on this monster. Next up is Toaster in the Pool, which I'm going to go ahead and say is another must-have monster for the sole purpose that, once again, you are a Thunder monster who is going to encounter a Voltic and a Xyla. So why is this a must-have skill? Well, it deals moderate thunder damage to one enemy. That's obviously not going to OTK Xyla or Volt, but this skill does 2 things. It applies Shock and Stun to one enemy monster. So Shock, you might be thinking, why do you want Shock? It only reduces the enemy's HP by 5%. The reason you want Shock is because Shock actually stops extra turn monsters. Shock also even blocks Anticipation. So even if you're fighting a Faraday, if you land Shock on Faraday, his Anticipation trait won't work anymore. If you land Shock on Voltic, well, his extra turn skills won't work anymore. So that's why you want this. You want to try to apply that Shock, but in case Shock misses, you want to apply Stun to immobilize them so they don't get an attack in. So this skill is great because it can block Voltic, Xyla, and Faraday either by stunning or by shocking, which is what you want, right? And because they have Harden, because Zyla has Bulwark, if you just try to stun, you might miss. If you just try to shock, you might miss. So that's why you want to try to do both. So again, just for the sole purpose that you are Thunder Monster who has to face those problems, you definitely want Toaster in the pool. Next up, we have Underwater Spark, which deals heavy thunder damage to an enemy, applies shock and drown. 45 damage, 29 stamina cost, 2 turn cooldown. I don't think this skill is worth running, so on to skills group 3, where we just have a bunch of AoE skills. And the first one we have is Asphyxiant Strike. Deals moderate special damage to all enemies, applies drown to all enemies. 40 special base damage, 27 stamina cost, 2 turn cooldown, and it's an AoE drowned. Let's keep going. Power Plant in the Sea. So this skill I almost recommended, but I just can't get myself to recommend it. Deals moderate thunder damage to all enemies, applies shock to all enemies. That shock is like pretty much guaranteed. But what's not guaranteed is stun. It's only a 50% chance to stun all enemies. So you might be thinking, why run Toaster in the pool when you can do Power Plant in the Sea? Well, the reason Toaster in the pool is actually better is because even though it's a single target, again, you want to stun. This Power Plant in the Sea is a 50% chance to stun. So a skill like this against a Bulwark monster, you're rarely ever gonna stun. Against a Hardened monster, again, you're rarely ever gonna stun. It's hard enough to land a 50% chance to stun when the enemy has no trait to block, but when they have Harden, when they have Bulwark, when they have anything that increases the likelihood of them blocking negative effects, you're just not going to be getting through with these 50% chance skills. So, and especially when it has a 2, if this skill was spammable, then yeah, because you'd have some sort of counter to cooldowns activated. But when it's a skill with a 2 turn cooldown, yeah, I don't see this skill worth running, because if you don't land the shock, and you're most likely not landing the stun, that Voltic is going to kill you. That Zyla is going to kill you. And yeah, you're missing out on AoE damaging everyone else. But again, the main immediate threat is that Voltic and the Zyla with the extra turn skills. So I cannot recommend Power Plant in the Sea. So then that leaves Deep Sea High Voltage. Deals moderate thunder damage to all enemies. Applies shock and drown to all enemies. 30 damage, 30 thunder base damage, 22 stamina cost, 3 turn cooldown. It applies shock. It applies drowned. I would say run this skill. It aside from dealing damage, the fact that it applies 2 DLTs that will take away 15% of the enemy's HP for the next 3 turns, that's pretty significant. It'll also take some stamina. It'll prevent extra turn skills if it lands. And again, in the right scenario, your monsters are already protected from immune to control. Your main deny monster can go and deny the enemy. So then your secondary monster can give this monster double damage and increased accuracy. And then you can do Deep Sea High Voltage, which will essentially be 60 damage and apply shock and drown with a high likelihood of landing thanks to the increased accuracy. So 60 thunder base damage plus 2 torture effects that most likely the enemies aren't immune to. You know, not that many monsters, not any monster I think is immune to shock or immune to drown. Right now they're just immune to ignition, burning, poison, all the basic stuff, bleeding. So high likelihood of landing your torture effects, and again, because of the increased accuracy. Or you can do Asphyxiant Strike, which is 80 special base damage, and it applies to drowned. So I think most of the time you'll probably go with Strike over Deep Sea High Voltage, unless you're facing water monsters, because then this gets an extra 50% boost. And again, because this monster is in the Sea Book, high likelihood of you facing water monsters. So for skills, I would recommend Deep Sea High Voltage, Asphyxiant Strike, Suffocating Strike, and Toaster in the pool. I don't really think you need Power Plant in the Sea, and I don't really think you need Underwater Spark. For runes, this monster is an attacker. I would say 2 strength runes and a team speed. You could also do 2 strength runes and a single speed, although you really want to make sure your secondary monster goes second in the turn order and your Eeltron goes absolutely last. That's really what you want. And seriously, just because of the trait alone, I feel like this monster is definitely worth using. I really want this monster now. At first I didn't, and I wish I would have known what his stats were and what his trait was, because then I might have really tried in the maze, because I think he was definitely worth possible able to get. Hopefully by the time you see this video, maybe you're seeing this video in the future. Hi, welcome to my channel. If you're watching this video in the future, hopefully you have this monster, hopefully you've been able to test him out, and hopefully you really like him. I like this monster. I ended up really liking the monster. It's great that he has a fantastic monster design. That power stat is just so beautiful. And the trait, gosh, I am looking forward to seeing what other monsters are going to be released in the future. But with that being said, that is going to be my monster analysis on Eeltron. That is my opinion, but now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about Eeltron? Whatever thoughts you may have on this monster, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much, and I will see you all next time.